thank you everyone for being here tonight. We're so excited.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces. It's wonderful. Thank you.
It's so cool to see you here. Like Diana and I've been planning this for how many months now?
Since before my book came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ofelia said, let's do something.
Like last year maybe when we met?
It might have been, yeah. It might have been like very hopeful. And it seems so in the distance, and here we are.
Here we are, yeah. I think it was in an open mic last year,
You're right.
yeah, when we
You're
met.
right.
Yeah.
It was my first reading ever, because I'm an accidental fiction writer. Yeah, yeah.
So we have a history, we do, and it was actually here, right here. It should be her first reading here. So it's kind of like a full circle kind of thing, and I don't know, I'm just so excited because we've been planning this for more than a year, and it finally happened. And I was telling Diana, because I share a lot, and I'm sorry, that's why I didn't want it to be recorded, because I say a lot of things that I shouldn't. You're sure I'm putting this in YouTube?
Should I be worried?
No, good. So I was like, Diana, I almost like, calling sick today, but no, we've been working for this for almost a year. We cannot be sick today. And yeah, here we are. No, but I'm just really grateful that we have this space, and the Writer Center is your home. And everyone who is a writer, a non-writer, a reader, anyone who enjoys, literatura, right? Yeah. So I'm just a little bit myself. I'm Mexican, that's why I have an accent, right? And yeah, it's just my beautiful accent. Sometimes I say things, like I've been calling Tamar the whole time instead of the real name. But yeah, so I'm here, you're here, we're here together.
It's time.
It's time, yeah. And raise your hand if you know Diana already. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna read it for my friend Victor, and I know here. Okay, the bio. Diana Rojas grew up in Connecticut and New Jersey, a journalist with a degree from New York University. She has worked for The Record, USA Today, Reuters Events, and other publications. She lives in Washington, D.C., and this is her first book. Yay! And something that Diana and I were like afraid is like, Diana, you have done so many events. Diana, like, I want us to do like a different, like something different. That's why we call it like More Than Saints, right? Because we wanted to talk about different things so you're not bored. And if you have ever been in one of her events, like we talk about something else, right? That was kind of our goal.
We're never boring.
We're never boring, no. So that's what we're gonna do, stand up tonight. I'm just kidding. What was your first joke? I'm just kidding. So for the ones who haven't read the book yet, Diana, do you want to just tell us like a quick summary?
Sure. The book is a triptych of novellas about Costa Rican immigrants who are struggling with their perception of who they think they're supposed to be and who they actually want to be.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And do you have a favorite one?
Oh, no, I'm a good mother. I'm not going to pick my favorite child.
Choose one, Diana. No, I'm just kidding. But I know you wrote, can you tell us a little bit how this started, how this was born?
It was supposed to be a memoir. I've always written nonfiction, mostly just really dry journalism, very dry articles that nobody's read because they were in these journals that nobody reads. And I decided I was going to write a memoir. And the memoir was going to be about my family's immigration story. And this was, of course, during 2020 when everybody was, I think, feeling a bit nostalgic, right? And I started to interview my family members, the ones who had originally come to the United States. And they all let me interview them, but they all gave me different versions of the exact same story. And I was faced with all this information. They kept saying, oh, we were so happy, we were so happy. I'm like, seriously, folks? Bravo, but I don't want to be the one to sort through all of this information and decide who's lying and who's telling me the truth. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe people wouldn't like each other afterwards. I didn't want to be that person. So I scrapped the whole idea of a memoir. And I took little pieces, little stories, and I put them together in a really dysfunctional family. Because somehow I don't believe that they were all so terribly, terribly happy, like they said. I think there had to have been years and years in between, and people saying, or covering it up, and because this is life, right? We don't dwell on the terrible things, or we have a terrible life. So I decided to create tension and drama where people told me there wasn't any. So it's not really the story of my family, but I will say there are some little glimpses of family members in there, and stories about people that came through my family's life.
That's awesome. I remember I was in your first event, and then, but now many months have happened, and now probably they have read the book, and now you went to Costa Rica and promoted the book there. What have been their kind of reactions, or like?
Oh my God, it was terrifying. It was just terrifying.
Tell us everything. Chisme.
Yeah, that's the working title of my next book.
Is
But
it?
Chisme. Yeah.
Okay.
Chisme means gossip.
Okay, that's the next question. Tell us more about Chisme. Okay, go.
I was terrified. I was terrified that people would first see the first novella and say, wait a minute, I recognize the curl of this person's hair, or the way that jerk used to talk. And there's, all fiction comes from our cumulative experiences in life. You can write something, you can even write speculative fiction, but you're only you. You're who you are, and the stories you tell are from someplace inside of you. So no matter how many times I told people, no, it's nobody, it's a composite of so many people, I was still terrified that they would say, how dare you, or that's not true, and it hasn't happened like that yet. Some people say, oh, I remember this, but it didn't go quite that way, and I'm like, you know why? Because this is fiction, right? Because I made this stuff up. And then the other stories were almost entirely made up. And I say almost entirely because we all mine from our cumulative experience, so I'm sure there's little bits of little stories I heard here and there. And I was afraid that people would start thinking I was telling truths in these stories, and that I would somehow become the history of record for our family. And it's kind of funny because we're in Costa Rica, and I decided this is too much for Mom, right? I don't want Mom to be fielding questions from relatives or people who say that, is this history, Clara, or is this? I didn't think she should be put in that situation, so I said, I'm not going to read at all. I'm not going to read at all. I'm just going to address the guests, and we're going to have a party. And then one of the guests that came was this boy, well, now he's a man. He's like 60. Yeah, but the last time I saw him, he was 60. The last time I saw him, no. The last time I saw him, he was about 16. Okay. And he was the first guy to introduce himself to us when we went to Costa Rica to live in 1981 for 2 years. And he was the first boy who came and rang our doorbell. And his name was Marco Aurelio. And we thought it was such a weird name. And he turns up at this event in Costa Rica. So I say, actually everybody here, I need to say, Marco Aurelio's here, and I need to say that this is the only bit of auto-fiction in my book. It's when, in the second novella, when the 3 girls move in, although I'm one of 5, I just discounted my other sisters. And the first boy who rings the doorbell is Aurelio. Now, if anyone's read the second novella, it is a tragic story. It is not anything you would want to happen to anybody you even remotely like a little bit. But that opening is just all happy, happy, happy. And after all this careful, let's not talk about it so Mom doesn't have to deal with it, Mom turns over and says, people are going to think you're the Tres Marias. You need to talk to them. You need to tell them right now. And then I was like turning all shades of purple. I'm like, no, Mom, no, nobody's gonna think that. Nobody's gonna think that. And then I'm looking at my crowd thinking, please don't think that.
Es que mira, Diana, you went back to Costa Rica. You know, you were born, you know, in here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's what the Tres Marias. Have you read it? The Tres Marias, some of you. They go back to Costa
They
Rica.
do.
Yeah.
They do. That's why I said this is
Yeah.
the only part that I could say was I told the story-ish as it happened because it was kind of funny, and then it deviates from there. But yeah, that's I think the perils of writing about people, or not people. I didn't write about people. Familiar ideas that other people can recognize.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, even when we write nonfiction, we're writing fiction because it's inner point of view. And as you say, we're never, ever, like everyone is gonna agree. This has happened. Never.
I started with nonfiction, and I got 4 different versions of the exact same story. So whose was fiction and whose wasn't?
Yeah, like memory is just like really, you know, it's not real, right? Like we can think about one thing one day, it's like, wait a minute, okay, what I told you yesterday? No. Something else.
I thought about it some more.
So even like nonfiction is fiction, right? It's like creative
Well,
writing, yeah.
yes, I mean, as a journalist, I would push back.
Oh yes. Well, it's gonna be
Don't tell tales.
Yeah. Like creative nonfiction.
Yes, creative nonfiction,
creative
yes.
nonfiction, right? So it's still a little bit of fiction because we have to, you know, like, add some meat to it, right? So you can create tension as well, you know, because creative nonfiction has to have tension.
A story without tension is not a story, right?
Exactly.
It's a report.
And the people ask you, like, where's the Spanish version when you were in Costa Rica? Do you have one?
Some people did ask me that, but I was asked that last night. I was at an event about for teachers, teach Central American everything too. And people asked me if I ever thought of writing in Spanish, and what language did my characters speak to me in? And the answer is always English, right? I mean, English is my language. And even if my characters would come and talk to me in Spanish, I'm going to translate them and put them in English. I'm also incapable of writing a book in Spanish because, I mean, I could probably write a really bad book, but my Spanish level is 8th grade, 9th grade. It's I could write a children's book, man.
Yeah, okay. But do you want to, like, to find a translator somehow? Like,
I kind of do now. After going to Costa Rica, I kind of do now. I feel that, at first I thought this book, I thought I wrote the book for Americans, right? And then I realized that actually the stories are quite universal. And even though I'm telling them from an American point of view and about people who immigrated or emigrated and the experiences they go through, which Costa Ricans living in Costa Rica would not understand as much, I think there's a lot of value in the stories themselves. So yes, maybe someday I'll find a translator.
No, yeah, I think so too, because the stories, I agree, they're universal, they're immigration stories as well, that even me as a Mexican, you know, like I saw myself a lot in these stories, right? But we need more Central American books, you know, and that's the reality of it. Because for so many years, we need more Latino books or Latine books, for sure. But more like Central America, like Costa Rican books, like can someone tell me 5 books from Costa Rica right now? No. So we need.
But wouldn't it be a little bit weird? Like, am I Costa Rican? That's the question. And this was when you say, was I afraid of presenting this to family? I was more afraid of presenting this to Costa Ricans and people coming to me and saying, how dare you? What right do you have to tell these stories? You're neither an immigrant nor are you Costa Rican. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I have the same right to tell the story as any storyteller has to tell any story, right? You know. But that was my bigger fear.
Yeah, but that's what the book is about identity.
It
so
is.
It's like,
yes.
How dare you read the book? Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. Right? You know, that's kind of the point.
It is true.
Yeah, they're
Be
different.
who you want to be.
Exactly,
Right.
and they're like 3 different immigration stories, and all of them are different, but they all deal with immigration and identity. No more like also like in the third one that John, Juan, right? He like was dealing with both of those identities, and in some of them, I was like, "Come on, why are you saying those things, right?" So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the research because I know you did way more research for the third one.
Yeah.
Can you
So
talk a little bit
it's
more?
not my favorite child. Don't anyone go away from here thinking that's my favorite child. But it was the most fun to write, in that the first two were almost therapy sessions because I was getting a lot of ideas out, and I almost wasn't in control. You know, the muse would wake up, it would wake me up and tell me, this is what's going to happen to your characters, and I'd be like, no! And then go ahead and write it. The third story, I did research it because I was always fascinated by this true series of events when terrorists, homegrown terrorists, started doing attacks within Costa Rica. And it was always whispered about, like, it was like, they're communists. And it was a terrible thing. They're coming, the communists are coming. And it was terrifying, and people would be really upset about it, but you couldn't talk about it. And so I started researching it first. Well, I started looking for stuff in the newspapers, and it's very, very hard to come by. I mean, yeah, I was using old microfiche, not actually just online now. They do it online, it's not as fancy. New York Times, looking for anything that said, those machines that like film that you go through the microfiche. Youngest person in the room, maybe. Never mind, I was going through old files, okay?
Go ahead, Diana, lo siento. Keep going.
I'll try to speak in a language you can understand, okay? I was going through old files and digital records of stories, and it was really hard to piece together because the New York Times would write something about these political events, and it would all be about Reagan this and Reagan that and how this affects the United States. It was really hard to get Costa Rican papers, and so I ended up calling people and said, do you perchance know, did you participate in? Which was really hard to do because they have this enlightened law in Costa Rica that once you serve your time, all the records are sealed. I can't even find out what people have been accused of. So I'm calling people who may have served some time for terroristic activities, and I'm saying, can you tell me what they charged you with? Can you tell me? And they're saying, who the hell are you? And what are you doing with this? I said, only fiction. I'm only writing fiction. I'm not using your name. I just want to get the idea. And that took months and months of calling and research and this thread, and that was so much fun. That was just, yeah.
That was the journalist in you.
That was the journalist in me. That was incredibly fun, and nobody ate. And it's like I wasn't cooking. I mean, I'm like,
oh, okay. Like what? Like you do? Like what?
The house was filthy. I'm stuck in my office. I'm happy as can be. And so that one was fun to write. That one was, and it was also quite interesting because it was this episode in Costa Rican history that Costa Ricans wanted forgotten. They didn't want to talk about their own homegrown terrorists. That's embarrassing. You don't mention that in a small country, especially because everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, or maybe related to them.
And because Costa Rica is known for being, as I say, like the Switzerland of Central America, pura vida. Everyone gets along here. Everyone is like, yeah, you're perfect. Yeah. I never been to Costa Rica, I don't know. But they, that's what I heard.
I mean, that's what's taught in schools.
Exactly.
We are perfect. We are the model country.
Exactly.
Everybody wishes they could be us, which is kind of funny when I'm writing this story, I'm gonna, tiny spoiler for those who haven't read it, I have his American wife saying, hey, it's okay to want the American dream. Everybody wants what we have. And I actually wrote the words that people would say in Costa Rica, everybody wants what Costa Rica has. Because I thought it was kind of funny that these two characters from the two different countries would be wondering which is better, which dream is better.
Yeah, that's a phrase that Miranda Priestley in Devil Wears Prada says. Yeah, like everybody wants these. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. We have one person that knows at least. Like everybody wants to be. Yeah, everyone wants to be us. So I feel like the seven guys like that. Like everyone wants to be us.
We're very conceited.
That's what I love about the third one, and it's like you break that. It's like, yeah, we have history too. Yeah.
Yes, and you know, the son of a cousin came to an event I did in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he waited until the whole thing was over, and he goes to the back and he whispers to me, he says, "You made Costa Rica look bad." I was horrified. Tears sprung to my eyes. I'm like, I didn't know. Did I? Oh my God. Like I had broken some commandment, like I had done something terribly, terribly wrong. Then I realized, wait a minute. Why am I so worried? Why? I mean, these things are ingrained, right? But I did not write a travel log. So why did that bother me? I don't have an answer. If anyone has an answer why that bothered me, go ahead.
No, but I think like as Latinas or Latinx, like we are really proud of our countries, but honestly, like they teach us at school, and I know Victor, this Mexican here, and they teach us like we have to like honor our flag, we have to like recite all of these, and very nationalist like point of view, and then we go out of our countries and we want to defend our country, but then we go back and it's like, is it, oh my God, like.
But we're taught the same thing in the U.S., right? Especially the older crowd here. There was a lot of we pledged allegiance to the flag every morning. Some of us sang a hymn before class started. Like it was quasi-religious, right? And we would sing patriotic songs, and you come to believe that yours is the best country, and it's when you get older and you start realizing, or maybe you move around or you go to different countries and you say, "Oh, is that what you think of us?" Or did we really do that? Did that really happen? And, you know, it's embarrassing sometimes, but when I leave the United States, whenever I've lived abroad especially, I'm this close to waving a flag because I never feel more American than when I'm out, because I feel like I need to defend my country, even in the face of wrong, even though I know, like, this is rough, but...
Yeah, and that's what history has, taught us. Like, everyone tells their own history however they want, and which is kind of like problematic some way, right? Like, even one of my classes that I'm teaching right now, they just learn, they're undergrads, right? And they just learned that Spanish was spoken 80 years before English here in the United States, right? And then it's like, I'm just surprised because there's still people out there that is like, we're speak English, we're in America. And like, ugh. Well, if you knew a little bit of history, you will know what have happened in the history. And English is not the official English anyway. So we are, hopefully we're breaking with that glass of, like nationalism in that way. And we can see, not only in the United States, but in our countries, right? Like, I love Mexico and I want to defend Mexico, but there's so many things happening in my country as well that makes me scared sometimes, many times. But yeah, so that's...
I don't know if we can always, like you say, that break that nationalism. If we bring it back, let's say a country is a family, right? A big family, and you have some members of your family you never want to invite to Thanksgiving, and you have the family that you like, right? If you say we're going to break with nationalism, we're not going to view ourselves as a family, we could say that. But it's really hard to do even in families, even in breaking with family culture or religion. Like if you're brought up in a certain way and you step away from the culture, the religion, or the customs of your family, you do so deliberately, knowing that you might be exiled from the Thanksgiving table, so to speak. And that's an act of courage. And I know that I'm not that courageous. I think that I would always want to feel like I belong. So instead of rejecting the United States or rejecting borders, even though that might be the right thing to do, I might just try to work towards making my family a little better and not so weird. And yeah.
maybe breaking is a hard word over here, like not the right word, but maybe like being aware of history, like how our countries, not only United States, like our countries in Latin America, how they have affected other countries,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah, so I think we should,
Especially our country, how it's affected other countries.
exactly, that's why immigration happens, but people are against it. And so there's like still like a lot of things that we have to learn, right? A lot of things we have to unlearn as well. And I think it's important, and I think that your third chapter is doing that, kind of like, hey, there's good things, really good things, but there are also things that we have to recognize that happen. It's not something, I'm not talking bad about the country, it's just what happened, right?
Yeah, it's true. There's no lies that the reporting is tight in that story.
From a journalist, but yeah. And
Google me.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. And also in your two first stories, I also like the craft element, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, of the fragmented, right? So we have, well, not in the present with Sebastian's, but we have different stories, like in the present with Felipe, and then in the past, telling the story about Ruth, right? And also, like in the second story, you have everyone read it? I don't want to spoil it. No? Okay. Okay. Yeah. You have one story and then the other one that is like a letter written to someone that I'm not going to say who that is, right? But you have those craft elements, right? And that they're like fragmented. Did you start writing them like you always know that you wanted to do that? What kind of happened? And then you start like thinking like, oh, this works this way, or how did that happen?
I think I always thought of it like a braid. You can tell a story, just lay it out there, tell a story. But the full story, the rich story, is like a braid. It's got different parts to it, and I don't know if anybody here knows how to braid. You can do a braid with 3 parts, you can do a braid with 6 parts, you can do all sorts of crazy braids. But the braid itself, the completed look, needs all those different sections. And that's always a question when you're writing. How do you incorporate all the information that the reader needs to know, or that you want to share with the reader, so that they can better understand the story you're telling? So it's almost like you have one story you want to tell, but you have to have a whole bunch of asides.
Yes.
So it is deliberate. I did do that deliberately, because you can't understand what's going on in somebody's life unless you understand what happened in their life, or because I don't have any future tense, but just what happened to make them the person that's living this moment.
Yeah, I really like that. And also read the second one. I won't say anything else. But tell us more about Chismes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, it might be. I believe in the jinx. I believe in the jinx.
Okay.
But it's a departure from this in that it's about a man who is falsely accused of a misdeed, and the idea of not being able to forgive. I was raised in a really religious family, so I'm working out a lot of my trauma and the things that I failed at. I'm working them out in fiction now. It's great therapist. Highly recommend.
It's interesting because for me, like, we're the only family in my town that we have no religion. So we were really weird.
Yeah, you were.
In a very Catholic, Mexico. And it was like, and they will ask me things, and this is the minority curse, but so they will ask me like, oh, so which church do you go to? So like, I have no idea, right? So and it's like, oh, you must be with Satan then, and like, who's that? Like,
you must be communist.
So it's like, I don't know who the guy is, but okay, whatever. And then years later, I started like lying, like, oh, are you Catholic? And like, sure, because I didn't want people to tell me that, I was with the chamuco.
It's so much easier to go with the flow. It's so much easier.
But I appreciate all the
Catholicism.
Yeah, no, because I learned. I always learn, right? And always like, because we haven't talked about saints because this is more than saints.
Yeah.
That's it. But I know you have a part that you want to read us that is new, that you have never read?
Well, I haven't read it publicly.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. But yeah, and then after that, we're going to open to questions for the audience. And yeah, more than saints. More than saints, okay?
Okay.
That could be the topic of a short story, more than saints.
You could write it.
No, you. Okay, you're the saints person.
I think I've used all my saints. I called on all the saints to write this book, okay, folks? I'm going to read from the first novella called The Lives of Saints. And synopsis, it's the story of a woman who has, who's reflecting on her life, lived in a very patriarchal family, and then she marries a man, Felipe, and Felipe wants them to be American. He wants them to just leave that old ways behind, and she struggles her whole life because she doesn't want to leave the culture she was raised in, or the very domineering patriarchal brother who is like their family saint. So I'm going to pick up the story where they decide to, well, she doesn't decide anything in her life, where they decide to move to the United States. A few months after Felipe had left for Las Vegas, Joaquin announced that he had been offered a job in New York City. He had at the time been working at one of the few fancy restaurants in San Jose, and an American tourist had so appreciated the attention he had received from him that he offered him a job at the hotel he managed. Very attracted to Joaquin, the tourist assured my brother that his Latin looks would get him far in the New York City restaurant scene. It was an offer he couldn't refuse. The tourist assured him that in 1 week in New York, he could make the same money it took him 2 months to make in San Jose. Joaquin got his papers together and boarded a plane for the first time in his life. His wife, Maria de los Angeles, and their toddlers were to move into our already cramped house until Joaquin could send for them. Angeles, as we called her, was misnamed. She was actually, truly, no angel. Her marriage to Joaquin had been more proof to Mama that her oldest son was blessed and watched over by his twin in heaven. Angeles was the belle of the town, the beautiful daughter of a prominent family. She was educated. She had never worked. But behind her sweet and smiley face, there was a mean and snobbish shrew, who, when Joaquin wasn't looking, treated all of us, Mama and Papa included, with disdain. Ruth, she would say, it's too bad you didn't apply yourself more at school when you were younger. A good education is what allows women like me to get ahead in life and marry well. Or, it's too bad Tony takes after his father. It might be my imagination, but he tends towards being lazy, right? We detested her. Mama would scold us if we even tried to complain, or God forbid, mimic her behind her back. She's your brother's wife. He loves her, she would snap. End of discussion. Angeles would hold court in our living room, inviting her lady friends over in the afternoon for coffee. She'd sit alone on the upholstered side chair, obsessively smoothing the skirts of her store-bought American dresses, hand-me-downs from her sister, drawing attention to their up-to-date fashion. There, in stage whispers, she'd explain that Joaquin had to leave in order to make more money, since Papa had taken a mortgage out on the house that he couldn't afford to pay back. The horror, she'd say dramatically. They were about to lose their house, until he volunteered to pay it back, for his mother's sake, of course. Mama's face would not change, but the rest of us burned with shame. It was true that Papa had taken out a mortgage on the house that was his wedding gift, free and clear, but he did it to finance a pulperia in town. It was true that he had skipped payments on the debt, but not because he was lazy or drinking. He had already stopped by then, but because he was a terrible businessman. Of course, he hadn't bothered to tell Mama about the failing finances. It was Abuela Juana who stopped in one afternoon and spoke in low tones to her at the stove, telling her that the house was about to be lost, telling her that Don Jesus had refused to bail his son out, telling her she was so sorry. But it was a lie that Joaquin was bailing us all out by himself. All of us were working hard to pay off this debt. In fact, Abuela Juana had barely shut the door when Mama rushed up the street to her brother's house and asked him for a loan. Her brother, Alejandro, was famously uncharitable. He had some money, but believed everyone had to pull themselves up alone. He did, however, have a soft spot for his little sister and agreed to pay the debt, the whole debt, but only after having her sign her ex on a scribbled note that said she understood 100% that it was a loan, requiring payback and not a gift. The house would not be lost. The day after Mama asked her brother for salvation, she sat Lucia, Tony, and me down after dinner and laid out the facts. Together, we came up with solutions to make extra money that could go towards paying off the loan. Lucia and Mama would take in laundry and ironing and tackle it after dinner. I was tasked with helping Mama make tamales and cajetas to sell at Papa's store on weekends, when the men hung out there downing shots of guaro and working up an appetite. Tony had to collect eggs from our chickens and buy some from the neighbors to sell door to door on his way to school. Pray to San Sebastian, she said. He was the patron saint of perseverance and courage. San Sebastian, ruega por nosotros. Joaquin had not been at our planning session. At the time, he was at his own house making plans to leave for New York. I don't know if Mama went over later to tell him what happened. She probably wouldn't have had to ask him to contribute outright because he was a man and had his own family to fend for. But I'm sure that he would have offered some of his new salary to help. My brother was that kind of guy. When I complained to Mama that Angeles was slandering us by not telling the whole story, she shrugged and tried to soothe me. What difference would it make to call her out? Let her be. She needs to believe in what she says. None of us were teary-eyed when Joaquin sent for Angeles 6 months later. We went about our lives, but it was mere months before Joaquin convinced Papa to also give the United States a try. After all, he reminded our father that his pulperia was never profitable and would never get the family ahead, so he had nothing to lose. Joaquin Jesus knows what's best for us, Mama insisted. Papa, encouraged by our mother to listen to our older brother, took off for Queens. It was 1965. When I wrote to Felipe to tell him about Papa's departure, he wrote back immediately, excitedly expressing his hopes that we would all soon follow. This is a good country, he wrote. Nobody cares what you were or who you came from. They only care that you know how to work. You really can become whoever you've dreamed of being here. You get your one chance at reinventing yourself. If you squint a little, this place is utopia.
Muchas gracias, Diana. We're going to open up for questions. Who wants to ask something? If not, I have more questions still. No? Over here.
Did you say you had all sisters in your family growing up?
Yeah, we're 5 girls.
Because the big brother, the obnoxious big brother in the first story is so well written, like he's like the perfect saint, you know, quote unquote saint, and I was just kind of wondering, like where you dreamed up his character, because he's so believable. I have a big brother like that, sort of.
Yeah.
He's not as sharp-tongued as that character is, but it kind of gave me some joy reading that character.
I mean, maybe this is what we thought of the idea of having a brother would be. We never wanted a brother. But at the same time, every family has its saint, I feel like. It could be a woman, it could be a man, and it's that one member of the family who's just so freaking perfect. Even though they're really not. And everybody can see they're not perfect except for the person who thinks that they're perfect. So, yeah, I wrote him as a boy because I only had sisters. Couldn't have been a girl, right? Sisters are great. But really, I wrote him in the model of every saint of every family I've ever met.
Yeah,
I don't
kind
like
of like
saints.
created mythology in the family, sort of, right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
I do have a brother like that. That cannot do no wrong.
I have so many people who have said that to me. Oh, I have a brother like that. I know somebody like that. I know this family saint. I kind of thought it was only my family. This is in writing this, I realized all humans are kind of exactly the same. In our difference. Yeah.
Any more questions that anyone wants to ask? I want to, before, keep thinking. We have like at least like 10 more minutes, but I wanted to ask you because normally like men, when they write in the point of view of women, they do it wrong, right? But you're writing in your third story in the point of view of a man. How do you feel about that? And how it's so? Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
I struggled with that because I felt like I didn't want him to sound like a girly man, because that's what I would sound like if I was a guy, right? So I did have men read the part, and I said if there was anything that a man would definitely not say, understanding that men come in all sizes and shapes, but if something sounded very female, call it out. And there were some parts where they said, yeah, that's
No one will take that.
not that kind of guy. That kind of guy would never say that. There weren't that many though. I don't know, I just kind of, I thought of guys. I thought of my father, my uncles, my cousins. I have hundreds of cousins. And whenever I needed to write dialogue, I listened to them talking, or in my mind, and I wrote their dialogue. I had to take out a lot of the swearing because I didn't want it to be that kind of book, but
That's so cool. Have anyone, another question over here.
I'm wondering how you feel of some of the stories as more universal for immigrants rather than just from Latin America or South America. Yeah, that culture, because I'm thinking my family immigrated to the U.S. when I was little. And in our family it was always, oh, can we do this? No, Americans do that. Well, I'd grown up all my life in America.
Yeah.
That's something Americans do. We don't do that. You know, and so I wonder about that, you know, because we always had this perception of being different.
yeah. I mean, that was one of the biggest insults. Or when Mom was really mad at us, she would say, "You're acting American," and that was she would, and that we were all born in the United States, and they chose to come to the United States. They weren't coerced, they weren't dragged. This was their choice, and I think that's a way to deal with the discomfort of otherness. When you come to the United States, you can, even if in my stories, I wanted everybody to have some sort of challenge to their identity, to their idea of who they want to be. And part of that challenge was what people expected you, immigrant, to be. And so I feel like, not me, because I'm not an immigrant, but to some extent also because, you know, we were raised in a, first generation has some issues, but you could be whoever you wanted to be, and people would still look at you, and in the case of my parents, they would say, oh, they're Hispanic. They wouldn't be individuals. And so the way I view these stories as universal, it's for, you could be Polish and read these stories. In fact, a Polish friend of mine read these stories and says, we first gens all have the same traumas. We had very different lives, but she had the same experiences. And I've heard this from other people of other nationalities. But I also wanted it to be relevant to people who are not immigrants, who don't come from immigrant families, because I feel like we're all born into a place in the world, and we don't always feel comfortable in that place. We don't feel comfortable in the culture we're born in. And it's what I was talking about before, the decision to step away, to be different from your family members, from the people you know, from your community, is a difficult decision. And I don't think it's ever made lightly. So it doesn't matter where your family came from, they might feel the same way as this Costa Rican family felt. And they might have had the same experiences, different permutations of the same experiences. Does that answer your question?
No, it was more speaking to the universality of the, you know, because when I read other books from, you know, immigrants writing about, you know, I can't think of the author's name, but Americana, you know, so that, you know, writing in that issue of what it's like being a foreigner, and then thinking of the broader about America, if it is a country of immigrants,
Yeah.
you know, is it in a way because they can see something different in some ways, it can also be towards improving things?
I mean, I would think that it could be improving, but, you know, there's always, not everybody, people reinvent themselves. And reinvention is especially hard when you're an immigrant. and you're doing it against the tide of stereotype. You don't even have to be an immigrant. Try being from Appalachia and deciding you want to be a New Yorker, and living in New York, and then your accent slips for a second, and all of a sudden somebody sees you for who you're supposed to be and makes assumptions about you. And it's hard. It's hard, but I guess the question, the crux of this is, can't we be whoever we want to be? Do we always have to be confined to cultural expectation? Or can we just say tomorrow, did anyone see Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? I want to be a dentist, and maybe I just want to be a dentist.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Okay.
okay.
You can't find it on my computer. I still don't know, yeah, you have to show me a photo later. But I know we have a question over here.
Yeah, so very exciting that you had your first reading here, which I didn't realize, and now you're back here. And so the question is about this process that you've been through. Some say that getting a book to that point, writing is only half of the work. Now that you are where you are, would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes. I would venture to say, I don't think anybody knows what's coming at them when you write a book. You write the book and it's really exciting, and wow, you got it published, super exciting. I still get excited. It's like, oh yay, this is a book. I think it's kind of ironic that the writer who sits in her office in this very interior life for a long time is also the same person who has to be very forward-facing and saying, hey, buy my book. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely exciting. It's also, it's humbling and terrifying. Sometimes just terrifying. But I'm doing it again, so it can't be that bad. It's like motherhood.
Yeah, like at the beginning, it's like, no, why am I doing this? Like, yeah, it wasn't that bad at all.
It wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll do it again, or maybe I like torture. Maybe I,
Yeah. But life is
There's a question.
Yeah, there's another.
I really liked your analogy about braiding. And I'm curious because so much of your prior work was nonfiction.
Mhm.
Do you think that applies at all in nonfiction, that analogy? Good question.
It's all storytelling.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what.
it's all storytelling.
Right.
When I was writing nonfiction only, it wasn't creative nonfiction. It was, but you still have to.
You mean it was reporting?
It was reporting.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
it was. I would get an assignment. It wasn't me writing an essay about Claire's necklace, right? It was me getting an assignment and trying to explain. And sometimes it would be quite dry, but you still have to get the reader's attention. You still have to tell a story because otherwise nobody's going to read past the first paragraph. So not nearly as creative, for sure, but I think the switch from nonfiction to fiction wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, and it's probably because I was freer. I didn't have to check quotes anymore. I could just write.
Right.
And I could decide that so-and-so needs to actually say this hideous thing, which honestly sometimes I would talk to sources and be like, wishing in my head, couldn't you just say this to make my story easier? And now I can do that.
Right. But you're still trying to get at a kind of truth, right? I mean.
Oh, that's a big
Well,
assumption.
I'm a philosophy major, so here goes. Yeah.
I mean,
Are you trying to,
am I trying to tell a truth?
Mm.
I don't want that responsibility. I don't. I just want to tell a story. And I'm a super opinionated person. And I'm always right, too, for those who know me.
But see, I think you're telling a truth or your truth or something.
No, actually, I'll be honest. If I don't agree with everything my characters say in this book. And I do most of my writing when I walk, and I must seem a little crazy when I walk alone, because I'm sort of like my head in the clouds, and I'm telling myself stories, and I'm talking to characters. So if I had an interaction with you, a real life interaction, I'll walk it off, and I will tell myself that story in 5 different ways, and until I get to this resolution that comforts me. That doesn't mean it's the truth. It means that I liked the way the language sounded. I liked my retort. I liked the musicality of that. I don't think I'm telling truths. I actually think I'm actively making shit up.
I love it. It's like, we can put that in the shirt. Like, I'm a writer, I make shit up. Yeah, I know, right? Maybe we have time for one more because we have some wine, we have some snacks, and we can.
We have cake.
talk.
I promise
We
cake.
have cake. It was promoted as cake. So if we have one more, the cake was promoted. Cake has to happen.
There must be cake.
One more question before we close now. Anyone? Let's go back in. Okay, just a few announcements. We have more events at the Writer Center. We have many. I see someone with a magazine. Yes. Okay, grab a magazine. I do a lot of events. Like this Saturday, we have Latine through the Little lens. You don't have to be Latine to come. You're invited. We have still some spots. They're free. They're workshops. They're free, and then we're gonna have a panel. And there's spots in the poetry section, and we have a comedy writing, which I'm so excited because I think I'm gonna attend to that one. And so we have those events. Then we're gonna have an open mic on October 12th, and we still have spots for that. And then we have more events as well, but I won't tell you all of them. But you can follow the Writer Center, you can follow me, you can follow Diana. I mean, a lot of you know her already. Just to find more information if you're interested. And what else? Do you have any other announcement before we go and eat cake?
No, no more announcements.
Okay, but we have some books for sale.
I've got a Venmo.
Yeah, she has a
My
Venmo.
books.
Yes, and then, and we're gonna eat and keep talking and take selfies and whatever. Yeah, and be happy, right?
By the way, Ofelia really needs to take a selfie because
We do
this
take
is
selfies, yeah.
who she is.
Yeah,
The
we'll
selfie.
take a selfie at the end of this, but, well, this is the end, so, okay, thank you everyone for coming, everybody.